Today, we're taking a deep dive into the story of Nimbus Village, a place where, well, the very fabric of reality is starting to come apart at the seams. We're going to explore what happens when the world you thought you knew just stops making sense.
I mean, just think about that for a second. You're going about your day, everything's normal, and then suddenly the basic rules you've always counted on just don't apply anymore. That's exactly what the people of Nimbus are facing.
It all kicked off with something totally impossible. As one of the residents put it was as if the sky itself just cracked open, and out came these creatures that nobody had ever seen before. This wasn't a freak weather event. This was like a tear in the map of their world. And this wasn't some distant spectacle you could just watch from your window. No, this hit them right where they lived. Simple things, a trip for groceries, planning to see a movie, meeting a friend for coffee. All of it just stopped. Reality itself basically put up a roadblock they couldn't get around.
What's especially creepy is how these things arrived. It wasn't some big flash or loud explosion. One villager said they trickled into existence. That slow, creeping materialization, that's way more unsettling, isn't it? It suggests something fundamental was changing. Not just a one-off event, but a shift in the physics of their world.
So, with their reality turned completely on its head, the people of Nimbus had to react, and their response went way, way beyond that initial shock. Pretty quickly, it became obvious this was much bigger than just some weird creatures. The changes were kind of subtle, but they were everywhere. The trees started to look different, the water wasn't pure anymore, boulders were just appearing out of thin air. And get this, even gravity seemed to be on the fritz. A simple trip and fall could send you somewhere else entirely. The world itself was becoming totally unreliable. Now, when faced with this much weirdness, people reacted, well, in very human ways. The whole village basically split right down the middle. On one side, you had pure fear. Some villagers saw all this as a terrible omen, a sign of hopelessness. But on the other side, an intense curiosity took over. Some people started gathering evidence, totally convinced that physical proof held the answers, while others saw it as this profound cosmic mystery that needed to be solved. This quote from one of the more anxious residents really nails that feeling of dread. It's like, when reality itself feels broken, how can you possibly be optimistic? For some, these changes weren't just strange, they were proof that the universe was a fundamentally grim place. Just when everyone thought things couldn't possibly get any stranger, the laws of their reality didn't just bend. Oh no, they completely shattered.
And then came the moment that broke everyone's brain. The village dog started talking. I'm not kidding. Not just barking, but forming complex sentences, sharing its own theories. This wasn't just another weird thing happening to the environment. This was a fundamental shift in consciousness itself. I mean, if a dog can suddenly explain its worldview to you, what in the world is even real anymore?
Okay, so you've got talking animals and warped physics. At this point, just watching isn't an option anymore. The villagers went from being shocked to becoming speculators, just desperately trying to come up with any explanation for what was happening. The first real attempt to make sense of it all came from a village scientist, and they break it down pretty logically. 1, the creatures appeared slowly from above. 2, the source seems to be the clouds. 3, just like rain, maybe they're formed from a similar source. And 4, they gather on the ground, kind of like fog. It's a solid hypothesis, right? Grounded in observation, trying to fit this insane event into a process they can understand. Then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have one of the village sages. Their solution? Everybody get together and dance. Seriously. The theory was that the collective movement would create some kind of particles that would mess with the creature's chemistry. A totally mystical communal idea. About as far from the scientific method as you can get. And those two were just the start. The theories started popping up all over the place, covering every category of human thought. You had another scientist suggesting it was all a mass psychological event. A different sage proposed the creatures were actually born from the loneliness of ancient rocks. And another believed the answer was purely mechanical, that it was all written down in some hidden book. This idea from Sage 2 is just fascinating, isn't it? It adds this whole historical layer to the mystery, suggesting this might not be the first time something like this has happened.
It connects the creatures not to a physical process, but to this ancient, almost geological emotion, the loneliness of stone. It's a really beautiful, poetic idea, even if you could never prove it. Now, with so many wild, conflicting theories flying around, you'd think the village would have just fractured, right? But instead, something else entirely started to happen. A shift from everyone being confused on their own to the idea of working together. And this, right here, is where the whole dynamic changes. One villager puts forward a new way of thinking. What if all their individual findings aren't competing theories? What if they're all just different pieces of one giant puzzle? Suddenly, the goal isn't about being right anymore. It's about figuring out how all the pieces might fit together. And this idea just starts to catch on like wildfire. We see a call to collage everyone's findings. We get a hint that certain doors would be open for anyone willing to team up. The scientists double down on investigating the source. And of course, the talking dog even offers up its superior sense of smell to help the cause. Everyone's chipping in. And really, that's the true transformation here. They haven't found the answer yet. The creatures are still there, reality is still wobbly, but the villagers themselves, they've changed. They're not just isolated victims of this weirdness anymore. They're a collaborative team of investigators, united by the mystery they all share. And this leaves us with a huge question, one that goes way beyond Nimbus Village. The story is about reality breaking down, for sure, but more than that, it's about how a community decides to put it back together. It makes you ask yourself, when our own world stops making sense, do we try to find the answers all by ourselves, or do we find them together?